This module is going to cover the concept of hazard recognition. We're going to help you to figure out what could go wrong and how to avoid these kinds of situations. You might not look at driving the way that we do, but for us, driving is a job, and it is something that we work at. We try to have good situational awareness, which is a knowledge of what is going on around us all the time. When we drive on the track, on the movie set, or on the street, we use three main ideas to give us better situational awareness. We look, we think, and we plan. We also try to make good decisions and good choices. We look at basic things. We choose to wear our seatbelts when we drive. We choose not to drink alcohol before or while we drive. We choose to do what it takes to be safe, what it takes to avoid hazards.
Hey, Mike Speck here, and you've just clicked on the second part of hazard recognition. So I'm going to draw a little scenario for you. You're just cruising down the road in your car. You're just minding your own business, and suddenly someone pulls out right in front of you. Can you stop in time? Well, in this case, probably not. Are they wrong for just pulling out in front of you? Yeah, of course they're wrong. But does it matter right now? No. You just need to get around them. So, what are you going to do? Well, one thing is for sure, if you suddenly decide that now is the best time to pay attention, then chances are you're going to have a problem, and so are they. On the other hand, if you've been paying attention and doing the three things that we suggested earlier, then you've got a fighting chance to get out of this situation. So let's do this. Let's back up the scenario and see what you were doing just before you had this problem. Now back here, you were scanning around for potential hazards. Nice job. You also had really good situational awareness, and you realized that the lane next to you was open. You also understood what you saw as you approached the driveway where the person pulled out in front of you. You could see that they were moving forward, kind of inching forward, and they were getting ready to pull into traffic. And finally, with all that info in mind, you were ready to do something, like make a quick or evasive lane change if, in fact, that was needed. And let's face it, that is exactly what was needed. Hey there, everybody. In this segment, we're going to talk about vision and where you should be looking. Now, your eyes are the #1 way that you can gain information about where you are on the road and where it is that you're going. When you use that information properly, we develop what we call situational awareness. We can actually get a lot of information, like figuring out where their cars are, if there are things we're going to need to avoid. We can also get information on how our car is doing by simply glancing over here at the dashboard, something that a lot of people don't do. Most of us just look at how fast we're going by checking out the speedometer. But it is a good idea to at least be aware of how much fuel you've got, because there's absolutely nothing good about running out of gas. Also, on the dash, when a red light pops up, it generally means something bad, and you're going to want to see to it as early as you possibly can and then do something about it. What we've talked about so far, though, really involves just looking forward, and honestly, it's pretty basic. But you got to remember that there are things going on behind us as well, and you have to be able to see that stuff. In order to see it, we usually use the mirrors. So let's take a look at how to use them and how to adjust them. So this thing here, it's what we call the rear view mirror. And just like the name implies, we use it to look behind us. Now you want to adjust that rear view mirror so you can see as much as possible through the rear window. So now we're going to look at the side view mirrors. And man, people have all kinds of ideas on how to adjust these things. Well, side view mirrors really were designed to do just that, to allow you to see at the sides of the vehicle, all right? Now, the way that you're supposed to adjust them is so that the side view mirror picks up right where your peripheral vision stops. Also, that side view mirror is supposed to stop right where the rear view mirror picks up, so that you don't get that blind spot. Now, here's the big one. Should we rely solely on our mirrors? And let me tell you, this is the subject of a ton of debate, and everyone has an opinion on what you should do. But really, it comes down to a few things. One, well, what's the situation? What's going on in front of you? How much traffic is there? Do you actually have time to look over your shoulder? And finally, how important is it for you to change lanes right there and then? Are you aware of your surroundings? Have you been paying attention to the drive? And do you have good situational awareness? You should have a good idea of where cars are around you. Trusting those mirrors or deciding to look behind you should really be treated as something you do based on the situation. Really, there's no hard, cold, tried and true rule that way. All right, final thing on those eyes and vision. You've got to look around, and you've got to look around a lot. We call it scanning. You want to look down the road, and you also want to widen your vision. You want to make sure you glance at the dash, and you also want to make sure that you check your mirrors. I mean, it should be something that you do the whole time that you drive. Now, honestly, does everybody drive that way? No, of course not. But that's probably because they might not understand the concept of situational awareness. And they might not realize how much that can help them to recognize hazards early enough to avoid them.
Hi, Keith Juan again. As it turns out, one of the areas of driving that presents the greatest number of potential hazards is at the intersection. But most people find stoplights at an intersection a good time to take a break from the concentration of their driving. In fact, if people are going to text and drive, many of them wait until they are stopped at an intersection before they text. It certainly seems to make sense until you realize what an intersection really is. The only area on the road where cars, pedestrians, and cyclists going in different directions and at different speeds all merge. Learning to read an intersection and how to identify potential hazards is an important part of the driving equation. Plus, there are several types of intersections and paths that cars can take at those intersections. In fact, there's so many potential scenarios at some intersections that it can get downright confusing. There are traffic lights, stop signs, two-way stops, four-way stops, left turn arrows, yield signs, left turn medians, U-turns, right on red, and no right on red. Plus, there are several indicators at intersections. There are the obvious indicators like the traffic light themselves, red, yellow, green. But there are also things like crosswalk, sign countdowns, and even just the general flow of vehicle and pedestrian traffic. All of these things can signal potential hazards. Will you see them? Will you be able to look, think, and plan? Well, that depends. What are you choosing to do as you approach and while you are at the intersection? Are you choosing to pay attention? And do you have good situational awareness? Or are you buried in your cell phone, checking messages?
The thing about driving that we really tend to forget, and this goes for teens and adults, is that it actually takes a lot of concentration to do properly. You know, the problem is so often we can get away without really thinking that much about what is going on around us and what we're doing in the car. And this is especially true when we get used to driving. You know, we get some confidence in it, and then, well, what happens is, honestly, we just get bored. Now, once we get bored with the process of driving, that's when potential problems come up because, you know, none of us wants to stay bored. You know, we want to fix that problem, and many times we do it by distracting ourselves or keeping ourselves occupied, which takes our concentration and our focus away from the task of driving. And like I said, the problem is that we usually don't have a problem doing that, usually. But eventually, And believe it or not, the statistics really do support this. At some point, you're going to have a problem. All right, so what kind of distractions are we talking about? Well, you know and I know that there are tons of distractions that can be a potential problem, but let's focus on the big one for the sake of saving a little bit of time here. Cell phones. We all know that we can text a message on one of these bad boys while we're behind the wheel of a car, because let's face it, chances are pretty much everybody's done it. And as far as you know, you haven't had a problem. But how would you know if you had a problem? You were texting. Look, just because your car is the same color at your destination as it was when you started the drive doesn't mean that you didn't have a problem. I mean, you could have wandered into another lane and forced another driver to leave that lane. Or you could have been texting at a red light and just kept on texting even though the light went green. You held everyone else up, and then you made them kind of leery of what you were doing. You could have blown right through an intersection at, let's say, I don't know, the mall, forcing another driver to avoid you. Look, the point of this is you don't know what you don't know when you're texting behind the wheel.
In this segment, we're going to talk about one of those things that has proven to be a major part of why people, teens in particular, get involved in car crashes. We call it speed management, or how fast you decide to go. The thing is, speed, or velocity, is largely a matter of perception, and that perception is based on a couple of things. One of them being how much room you had to maneuver. Here's an example. If I told you to go out on an open and free-flowing freeway with a speed limit of 65 miles per hour and drive 45 miles per hour, you would think that that speed limit is slow. On the other hand, if I told you to go into a parking lot at 45 miles per hour and park the car at that speed, 45 miles per hour is 45 miles per hour. It isn't fast or slow. It is what it is. How you perceive it is based on what you think could happen going at that speed. And there is the problem. Your experience as a driver can be another thing that affects how you perceive speed. When you first learn how to drive, everything seems fast, and so you're more likely to drive a bit slower. But when you get a bit of confidence after driving for a few weeks or months, all of a sudden driving at speeds beyond the posted limit seems just fine. I mean, so many other people do it, and there never seems to be a problem, as far as you know. As it turns out, about 4 out of every 10 car crashes that involve teens also show that the teen driver was speeding. Based on that information, we know that traveling at too high a speed can cause problems. And finally, how you manage your speed is also based on your personal maturity level, or your tendency to be influenced by friends in the car. We all know what happens. So how do you know what a safe speed is? Well, it depends. First off, you should obviously look at the posted speed limit and follow that. Next, you have to take into account road conditions. Finally, traffic flow many times dictates safe speed. All of this sounds incredibly obvious. So why do people speed? I mean, a car does not just magically start speeding on its own. It's a choice, a decision that is made by the driver. We all make choices for whatever reasons we have, but the data shows the repercussions of those choices. Not being able to properly manage your speed results in car crashes and deaths, period. Just think about it.
I'm going to give you a little info on how to safely manage the speed you are traveling, just to help you see what a little increase in speed can do if you suddenly need to stop or turn. Most people think that small increases in speed mean small increases in what it takes to make the car do what you want. Check it out. A car going 40 miles per hour takes about 50 feet longer to stop than a car going 30 miles per hour. That's only a 10 mile an hour difference. But a car going 80 miles per hour can take more than 150 feet longer to stop than a car going 70 miles per hour. Final thing, differences in speed between various cars on the road is one of the biggest factors that can lead to car crashes even when people are traveling at the posted speed limit. You can see pretty clearly from this video that if someone decides to cut out of their lane into yours, or if someone decides to slow down hard to get into this lane, and you aren't managing the speed you are traveling, there's going to be a problem. All of a sudden, what doesn't seem fast will seem super fast. So there you go. Just a little bit more info that you can help shape the choices you make when you are driving.
Knowing when to slow down and how to manage your speed and space are definitely primary skills required to be a good driver. But what happens when things don't go as planned? For example, what happens if you try to slow down but can't? Although extremely rare, what should you do if for some reason the gas pedal gets stuck? It can be pretty scary. Once you figure out that you have that problem, you should definitely try to brake. But you also have to stop the engine from trying to move the car forward. So you have to put the transmission in neutral. The engine will keep revving, but it won't push the car forward. So the brakes will now let you slow the car down. Next, you want to pull over to a safe spot off the road as soon as you can. After the car is brought to a stop, then you can turn it off. Don't try to shut the car off while it is still in motion. And don't try to drive the car again until you know what caused the problem and you have it fixed.